The red shoes. Part 1: Inheritance. The apartment smelled like lavender and regret when Karen finally opened the door. Her grandmother's place. Now hers, she supposed. Though the word hers felt too solid for something gained through death. The lawyer had handed her a single key and an envelope containing a handwritten note. Everything inside is yours now. Be careful what you wear. Karen stood in the doorway, her duffel bag heavy on one shoulder, and surveyed the space. It was smaller than she remembered from childhood visits. The walls were still that peculiar shade of cream that somehow looked sad in any light. Photographs lined the mantel. Her grandmother as a young woman, radiant and laughing, always in motion. Then fewer photos. Then none at all from the last 20 years. She just stopped going out. Her mother had said at the funeral, dabbing at dry eyes. Stopped everything, really. Wouldn't say why. Karen set her bag down and moved through the rooms like an archaeologist, cataloging the life of someone she'd known only in fragments. The kitchen immaculate, barely used. The bedroom, a single bed made with hospital corners. The closet, she stopped. The closet was wrong. Not disordered. Quite the opposite. Every item hung with mathematical precision, organized by color, then by length. But at the back on the floor sat a shoebox. Red. Pristine. As if it had materialized yesterday. Karen knelt and pulled it toward her. No dust. The box was warm to the touch. Inside, nestled in tissue paper that crinkled like autumn leaves, were the shoes. Red patent leather, impossibly glossy. The kind of red that didn't exist in nature. The red of sports cars and warning signs, and lipstick worn by women in film noir. They had a low heel, a delicate strap across the instep, and when Karen lifted one, it seemed to weigh nothing at all. There was a card tucked beneath them, yellowed with age, written in her grandmother's careful script. They found me when I was 23. They'll find you too. I'm sorry I couldn't warn you better. I'm sorry I wore them at all. When they get too warm, you'll know it's too late. Karen read it twice, then laughed. A short, nervous sound that echoed in the empty apartment. Her grandmother had been declining for years before the end, her mind wandering down paths that made less and less sense. This was just another eccentricity, a final quirk to remember her by. She tried on the left shoe. It fit perfectly. Not just well, perfectly, as if it had been made specifically for her foot. For the slight prominence of her left bunion, and the way her second toe was longer than her first. The leather was soft as skin. She tried on the right shoe. Something in her chest expanded. Not her lungs. Something behind them. Something that had been compressed for so long, she'd forgotten it was there. She stood up. The world tilted into focus. Colors sharpened. The cream walls weren't sad at all. They were warm, waiting. A canvas. The afternoon light through the window wasn't wan. It was golden, honeyed, full of promise. And her body, her ordinary body, that she'd spent 25 years dragging through life like luggage, suddenly felt capable. Karen took a step. Then another. She'd never been a dancer. In high school, she'd been cut from the musical. At the club, She stood near the wall, nursing drinks, watching others move with an envy so profound it felt like hunger. But now her hips knew where to go. Her arms found angles that made sense. She turned, and the turn was clean, economical, beautiful. She laughed again, but this time it sounded different. Free. She danced across the living room, and it wasn't clumsy or self-conscious. It was right. The shoes made small clicking sounds against the hardwood, a rhythm that her body followed instinctively. She danced until the light turned blue, until her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Have you settled in? Until she realized she was breathing hard and smiling and hadn't thought about her dead end job or her empty bank account or her ex-boyfriend's new girlfriend for 2 whole hours. When she finally stopped, when she finally bent down to unbuckle the straps, her fingers fumbled. The buckles were small, fiddly. It took longer than it should have. The shoes were warm against her skin. Not unpleasantly so, just noticeable. Karen set them back in their box, but she didn't close the lid. She left them on the coffee table where she could see them. That night, she dreamed of dancing. Part 2. The first performance, by the 3rd day, Karen had worn the shoes to the grocery store, the post office, and the coffee shop on the corner, where she'd started spending her afternoons. She told herself it was practical. They were comfortable, and she was still unpacking, still settling in. And why not enjoy something beautiful? But the truth sat heavier. She couldn't stop thinking about them. When she wasn't wearing them, her body felt wrong. Her regular sneakers seemed to weigh 10 pounds each. Her flats made her feet feel numb, disconnected. Only in the red shoes did she feel like herself, or perhaps like a better version of herself. The version she'd always suspected existed beneath the anxiety and self-doubt. The shoes changed how people looked at her. At the grocery store, a man held the door open and smiled, really smiled. Not the polite grimace strangers usually offered. "Great shoes," he said. "At the post office?" The woman behind the counter complimented them, then asked where Karen had gotten them. "They're vintage," Karen said, which was both true and inadequate. At the coffee shop, she noticed people glancing at her feet, then at her face, then away. Not hostile, curious, envious. It felt good. Better than good. It felt like power. On Thursday, she wore them to the community center. She hadn't planned to. She'd gone to pick up a recreation schedule, thinking vaguely about yoga classes, or maybe pottery. Something to fill the echoing hours of unemployment. But when she saw the flyer for open dance night, her hand was already reaching for it, before her brain caught up. Every Thursday, 7:10 p.m., all styles welcome, come move with us. "You should come," said a voice behind her. Karen turned. A woman stood there, maybe 30, with dark hair in a bun, and the kind of posture that suggested decades of training. She was looking at Karen's shoes. "Sorry. Dance night. You should come." The woman's smile was warm but assessing. "I'm Lucia. I teach contemporary on Tuesdays, but Thursdays I just come to move." "You dance?" "Not really," Karen said automatically. Then, Because the shoes were warm against her feet, and her body remembered the feeling of rightness. I mean, I've been practicing, just at home. Thursday, Lucia said, 7 o'clock. Trust me, you'll love it. Karen arrived at 7:15, late enough to slip in without drawing attention. The community center's multi-purpose room had been transformed mirrors along one wall, speakers in the corners, and about 20 people scattered across the floor, stretching or chatting or swaying to the low music that filled the space. She recognized Lucia immediately, talking to a man in a tank top near the mirrors. When Lucia saw Karen, she waved her over. You came! Here! Shoes off over there, then. Lucia stopped staring at Karen's feet. Oh, you're wearing them. Is that okay? It's open format, people dance and whatever. But Lucia's eyes lingered on the red shoes, and something crossed her face that Karen couldn't read. Concern. Recognition. The music shifted, growing louder, and people began to move. Karen stood at the edge, watching. She'd tell herself later that she meant to just observe, to get a feel for the space before joining in. But the shoes were already warm, and her body was already moving. And then she was dancing, not following anyone, not mimicking, just dancing. Her arms carved shapes in the air. Her spine undulated. She spun, and the spin was controlled, precise, and when she stopped, she was facing the mirrors, and she saw herself, truly saw herself, for the first time. She looked alive. She looked real. She looked seen. Behind her reflection, she noticed others slowing, turning to watch. Lucia had stopped moving entirely. The man in the tank top whispered something to the person next to him. Karen danced harder. The music was in her bones now. Or maybe the shoes were the music. Or maybe there was no difference. She leapt. Actually leapt, her body trusting itself to land correctly. And it did. She turned again faster. A pirouette that should have left her dizzy, but instead left her exhilarated. The room had gone quiet. Everyone was watching, and Karen wanted them to watch. Wanted them to see what she could do, what she'd become. The envy on their faces was delicious. The admiration was a drug. She danced until the song ended, until the silence that followed felt like applause, until Lucia walked over with an expression Karen still couldn't name. Where did you learn to move like that? I don't know, Karen said, and it was the truth. The shoes help. Lucia glanced down. The red shoes gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Yeah, Lucia said softly. I bet they do. Karen went back every Thursday. Then she started going on Tuesdays, when Lucia taught. Then, she started going whenever the center was open. Whenever there was music. Whenever there was someone to watch her. Because people always watched her now. She posted a video on Instagram. Just 15 seconds of her spinning in the red shoes. The light catching the patent leather, her face fierce and joyful. It got 200 likes in an hour. Then 500. Then 1,000. The comments poured in. Where did you get those shoes? You're incredible, I need your confidence. Obsessed with this, she posted more. The numbers grew. Her phone buzzed constantly with notifications. with messages from strangers asking about her, about the shoes, about whether she taught classes or performed anywhere. "You should," Lucia said one Tuesday after class. "Perform? I mean, there's a showcase next month. I could put you on the lineup." "I'm not a professional," Karen said, but she was already imagining it. A stage, real lights, an audience that came specifically to see her. "You don't have to be. You just have to be good." Lucia hesitated. "You are good, Karen. But, and don't take this the wrong way, maybe ease up a little. You've been here every day this week. Your body needs rest." Karen's body didn't feel tired. It felt awake, alive, like it had been sleeping for 25 years and finally, it was conscious. "I'm fine," she said. The shoes pulsed warm against her feet, agreeing. Part 3: Acceleration. The showcase was on a Friday. Karen spent the entire week preparing, not practicing, because she didn't need practice. The shoes knew what to do. She just had to show up and let them move her. But she wanted everything else to be perfect: her hair, her makeup, her outfit. She bought a red dress that matched the shoes exactly, something that clung and flowed and made her feel like she was already dancing, even when standing still. Her mother called that Thursday. "I haven't heard from you in 2 weeks," she said, not quite accusing. "Are you doing okay? Have you been looking for work?" Karen had not been looking for work. Work seemed irrelevant now, a distant concern from a previous life. "I'm dancing," she said. "Dancing. There's a showcase tomorrow. I'm performing." A long pause. "Karen, that's great, honey, but you need to think practically. Your savings won't last forever and..." "I have to go," Karen said. "I need to get ready." She hung up before her mother could respond, and the guilt that should have followed never arrived. Instead, there was only anticipation, hot and bright in her chest. The showcase was held in the community center's theater, a small space with maybe 150 seats. Karen arrived early, before the other performers, and stood on the empty stage, looking out at the rows of chairs. This was where she belonged. The shoes hummed against her feet. That was the only word for it. They were warmer than usual, almost hot, but not painfully so. It felt like approval, like readiness. Other dancers started arriving: a jazz trio, a couple doing ballroom, a teen hip-hop crew. They stretched and chatted and ran through their routines. Karen stood apart, near the wings, and felt the distance between herself and them like a physical thing. They were good, but she was going to be better. Lucia found her before the show started. "You're up 4th, she said. 2 minutes, 30 seconds. The tech guy has your track." Then, quieter. "Are you sure you're okay? You look..." "I'm perfect," Karen said. Lucia studied her face. "Yeah, that's what I'm worried about." But there was no time to explain, no way to make Lucia understand. The lights dimmed. The audience settled. The show began. Karen watched the first 3 acts from the wings, barely registering them. Her heart was racing, but not from nerves. From readiness. From hunger. Then it was her turn. She walked onto the stage. And the lights hit her. And the audience, was a dark mass of potential attention, potential admiration, potential seeing, and the music started. She danced. Later, she wouldn't be able to describe it. The movements came from somewhere beyond conscious thought, beyond technique. Her body knew things it shouldn't know. How to balance on the ball of one foot while the other leg extended impossibly high. How to fall and make it look intentional. How to hold the audience's gaze and make each person feel like she was dancing only for them. The shoes were burning now, but the burn was good, was fuel, was life. She spun. She leapt. She moved through space as if gravity were negotiable. And the audience, she felt their attention like heat on her skin, heard their gasps, their whispered exclamations. Saw. In the moment when the lights shifted, their faces rapt, hungry, envious. They wanted what she had. They wanted to be her. The knowledge was intoxicating. She didn't want the music to end. When it did, when she hit her final pose, arms raised, head back, chest heaving, the applause was immediate and thunderous. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. After the showcase, people crowded around her. Strangers asking for photos, for autographs, for her Instagram handle. An older man in an expensive suit gave her his card, Marcus Trent, Talent Management. "Call me," he said. "I see potential." Lucia caught her arm as the crowd finally dispersed. I don't even know what that was. You've never moved like that before. The shoes, Karen said. Looking down at them, they were cooling now. Back to warm instead of hot. They helped me focus. Karen. Lucia's voice was serious. I need to tell you something. Those shoes, I've seen shoes like that before. My grandmother had a pair. She danced in them once at a competition, and she was brilliant. But after, she couldn't stop. She danced for 3 days straight, before they got her to a hospital. Karen pulled her arm free. Your grandmother wasn't me. No. But the shoes were the same. Lucia glanced down at the red patent leather, and her expression was pained. They're beautiful, and they make you feel incredible, but they take something in return. Please just take them off for a while. See how you feel. I feel great, Karen said, and she did. She felt powerful. She felt like she'd finally found her purpose, her identity, herself. She walked away from Lucia, from the community center, from the worried voices telling her to slow down, to rest, to stop. The shoes clicked against the pavement, a rhythm her body followed instinctively. She danced down the sidewalk, under the streetlights, and she didn't care who saw. Part 4 Consumption. The phone calls started the next morning. Marcus Trent wanted to schedule a meeting. A local dance studio wanted her to teach a masterclass. A blogger who'd been at the showcase wanted to interview her. Karen said yes to everything. Her Instagram exploded. The video she'd posted from the showcase. Someone in the audience had filmed it on their phone, and she'd shared it. Had 50,000 views in 2 days. Then 100,000. Her follower count climbed from 800 to 15,000 to 30,000. The comments were worship. I've never seen anyone dance like this. You're not human, Tach Osasos. What's your secret? She read every single comment. Each one was a small hit of validation, and she was insatiable. She wore the shoes everywhere now. To the grocery store, where she pirouetted in the cereal aisle for a video that got 80,000 views. To the park, where she danced by the fountain and gathered a crowd of children who clapped and laughed. To meetings with Marcus, who wanted to book her for corporate events, weddings, promotional campaigns. "You're a brand waiting to happen," he said, leaning back in his leather chair. "We start with local gigs, build your portfolio, then move to regional competitions. Maybe audition for some shows. You could be on Broadway in 2 years if you play this right." Broadway. The word glittered in her mind. "Yes," she said. "Let's do it." But her body was starting to argue. Not loudly, just whispers at first. An ache in her left knee. A twinge in her right ankle. Blisters that formed and burst and reformed. She ignored them. Dancers always had pain. It was the price of the art. The shoes were hot most of the time now, even when she was just walking. When she danced, they were almost scalding, but the heat had become familiar, even comforting. Like the burn of a good workout, of pushing past limits. She taught her first masterclass on a Wednesday. 40 people showed up, far more than the studio had expected. They watched her with the kind of reverence usually reserved for celebrities. "Where did you train?" someone asked during the Q&A. "I didn't," Karen said, and felt a thrill at the gasps. "I just found my rhythm." After class, a young woman approached her, maybe 19, with eyes bright with admiration. "Your shoes," she said. "They're beautiful. Where did you get them?" "They were my grandmother's," Karen said. "Do you think, could I try them on? Just for a second?" The request sent a bolt of something cold through Karen's chest. Possessiveness. Fear. Mine. Her mind said. "They're no," she said, more sharply than she intended. Sorry. They only fit me." The young woman's face fell, but Karen barely noticed. She was looking down at the shoes, which were pulsing warmth in what felt like agreement. By the second week, Karen had stopped sleeping more than a few hours a night. When she tried to lie down, her legs twitched. Her feet flexed and pointed under the sheets. Her body wanted to move, and denying it felt like denying breath. So she danced. At 2 a.m. in her apartment, she danced to music only she could hear. At 4 a.m., she posted videos that her followers consumed with fervent approval. At dawn, she collapsed for an hour or two, then woke and danced again. Her phone was always in her hand, always scrolling through notifications, through comments, through messages from strangers who loved her, who wanted her, who needed her to keep posting, keep moving, keep being the impossible beautiful thing they'd found. She stopped answering her mother's calls, stopped responding to Lucia's texts, stopped checking her email except for booking requests. The outside world had become an abstraction. Only the dancing was real. Only the attention mattered. On the 15th day, she looked in the mirror and didn't recognize herself. Her face was gaunt, her eyes too bright. Her hair, unwashed for days, hung in lank strands. Her body, still moving, always moving. showed the architecture of bones more clearly than it should have. But the shoes were pristine, unscuffed, gleaming perfect. She bent to touch them, and they were hot enough to hurt. "I should take you off," she whispered. Her fingers went to the buckle, but she couldn't. The thought of being without them, of feeling her body go numb and clumsy again, of losing the attention and admiration and power. She couldn't. "Just a little longer," she said to her reflection. The reflection didn't answer, but the shoes pulsed warmth, and Karen started dancing again. Part 5. Isolation. The first person to stop returning her calls was Marcus. "Karen, we need to talk about your schedule," he'd said during their last conversation, 3 days ago. "You're booking yourself into the ground. 5 gigs in 3 days isn't sustainable. You need rest. I need more opportunities," she'd interrupted. "What else do you have?" The silence on the other end was heavy. "I'm going to be honest with you. You're starting to worry people. There are whispers about your health, about whether you're okay. I've never been better. That's what concerns me." Another pause. "Take a week off. Rest. If you come back refreshed, we can talk about next steps." She'd hung up. She didn't need Marcus. She had her followers. Her videos, her comments section, full of people who understood her, who celebrated her, who didn't try to hold her back. But Marcus wasn't the only one pulling away. The dance studio stopped responding to her emails about teaching another class. The community center, Lucia's domain, sent a gentle message saying they were at capacity for instructors right now. Maybe try again in a few months. Her Instagram engagement was dropping too. Not dramatically, but enough to notice. Videos that used to get 100,000 views were now getting 70,000, then 50,000. Comments that used to be exclusively adoring now included concerns. "Are you okay? You look tired, this is getting weird, maybe take a break." She deleted those comments, blocked the users, posted more frequently, more desperately. One video, filmed at 3 a.m. with shaking hands and wild eyes, showed her dancing in her apartment to no music at all, just the click, click, click of the red shoes on the hardwood. She posted it with the caption pure, raw, real. It got 30,000 views and twice as many comments telling her to seek help. On the 20th day, she decided to go outside, not to perform, not to film, just to move. Her apartment had started to feel small, the walls pressing in, and her body craved space. She wore the shoes. Of course she wore the shoes, and a jacket thrown over her pajamas. And she walked out into the night. The streets were mostly empty. It was past midnight, the hour when the world belonged to insomniacs and shift workers, and people with nowhere else to be. Karen walked, but walking felt wrong. Insufficient. The shoes were warm, insistent, and her body responded without conscious decision. She began to dance down the sidewalk. It felt right again, like it had in the beginning. The cool air on her face. The city lights reflected in windows and puddles. The rhythm of her footsteps, echoing off the buildings. A man walking his dog stopped to stare. She spun past him, laughing. A couple leaving a bar paused to watch. she lipped. And the landing was perfect, and they applauded. She danced through intersections when the lights were red, trusting cars to stop. She danced through the park, under trees that whispered their approval. She danced past the community center, dark and locked, and felt a pang of something like loss before the shoes pulsed warm and pulled her onward. She danced until the city ended. The buildings gave way to scattered houses, then to nothing but trees. The sidewalk became a path. The path became dirt. She'd reached the forest at the edge of town. A stretch of old growth that everyone warned hikers not to enter at night. Too easy to get lost. Too many stories of people who went in and came out changed, or didn't come out at all. Karen stood at the threshold, breathing hard. The shoes were hot now, almost burning. She should turn back. She knew she should turn back. But the forest was singing to her. No, that wasn't right. The shoes were singing, and the forest was answering, and between them was a conversation she couldn't understand, but desperately wanted to join. She stepped between the trees. The world changed. Part 6. The threshold. The forest was wrong. Not dangerous. Karen had expected danger, had steeled herself for it. But this wrongness was subtle, pervasive. The trees stood too straight, their trunks perfect cylinders. The moonlight filtered through the canopy in geometric patterns, precise as a grid. When she took a step, her footfall echoed, which didn't make sense in soft earth and moss, but there it was, a sharp click that repeated and repeated, bouncing between the trees like a question asked in an empty room. The shoes were scalding now. Karen tried to stop walking, but her feet wouldn't obey. They carried her forward, deeper into the forest. And she could feel the difference in her body. The way her knees bent at angles she hadn't chosen. The way her arms rose and fell in patterns she didn't recognize. She wasn't dancing anymore. She was being danced. "Stop," she whispered. Then louder, "Stop." The shoes clicked onward. Click, click. Click, click, click. A rhythm that might have been musical or might have been mocking. The forest shifted around her. Or maybe she was shifting through the forest. It was hard to tell. One moment she was passing an oak tree with a lightning scar. The next moment, the same tree appeared ahead of her again. The scar identical, and she realized she'd been walking in a circle without turning. Time felt loose here. Negotiable. She'd entered the forest at night, but now the light was changing. Not dawn exactly, but not darkness either. A perpetual twilight that made it impossible to tell how long she'd been walking. Minutes. Hours. Her phone was in her jacket pocket. She tried to reach for it, but her arms were dancing now, carving shapes in the air. And when she finally managed to grab the phone and pull it out, the screen was black. Dead, even though she'd charged it to full before leaving the apartment. How long ago had that been? "Help," she tried to say, but her voice came out as a gasp. Her body was exhausted, every muscle screaming, but the shoes kept moving. Kept forcing her feet to step and turn and leap over roots that might not have been there a moment before. She was crying now. The tears were hot on her cheeks, and they felt like the only real thing in this unreal place. The forest opened into a clearing. In the center stood a man. Part 7, the guardian. He was tall, old, with a face that looked like it had been carved from the same stone as the mountains. He wore a long coat that might have been leather, or might have been something else. Something that moved like fabric, but gleamed like chitin. His eyes were the colorless gray of winter skies. He didn't look surprised to see her. Karen's body danced her into the clearing, closer to him. And she wanted to scream, but couldn't find the breath. The shoes were agony now, the leather searing her skin. And she could smell burning. Or was that just her imagination? The man watched her dance, not with pleasure or pity. Just watching. Finally, after what might have been minutes or hours or days, he spoke. "How long have you been wearing them?" His voice was low, rough. The kind of voice that sounded like it didn't get used often. "I don't," Karen gasped. "I don't know. Please. Help me." "How long?" he asked again. She tried to remember. The showcase had been when? 2 weeks ago. 3 more. The days had blurred together, indistinguishable, measured only in videos posted and comments read, and the endless need to move. "A month," she whispered. "Maybe more." The man nodded slowly. "Then you're already lost." "No." The word came out as a sob. "No, I just need to take them off. I just need." "Have you tried?" She had. She'd tried every day for the past week. Whenever the fear crept through the exhaustion. But her fingers wouldn't cooperate. The buckles were too small. Or her hands were shaking too hard. Or some invisible force turned her attention away at the crucial moment. The shoes didn't want to be removed. And some part of her, a part that was growing larger, consuming more of who she'd been, didn't want to remove them. "They're beautiful," the man said. And his voice held something that might have been sympathy. "That's how they work. They show you a version of yourself you've always wanted to be. And then they make you that version. But the you they make isn't you anymore. It's them. I don't understand." "You don't have to." He stepped closer. And Karen's body pirouetted away from him instinctively, keeping the distance. "They've been passed down for generations. Your grandmother wore them. And before her, another woman. And before her, another. Some wear them for weeks. Some for years. But eventually, they all end up here." "Where is here?" "The space between wanting and having." The man's eyes were sad. "The place you go when what you desire becomes what devours you." Karen tried to stop moving, tried to force her body to stand still, but the shoes were in control now. She could feel them making decisions. Turn here, leap there, spin until the trees blurred into a solid wall of green and gray. "Can you help me?" Her voice was breaking. "Please." "I can," the man said. "But only when you're ready." "I'm ready now." "No." He shook his head. "You still want them. Part of you still believes they're worth it. That the dancing, the attention, the feeling of being special, that it's worth whatever price they're asking." "I don't." But she stopped. Because it was a lie. Even now, even as her body betrayed her, and the shoes burned, and the forest trapped her in its impossible geometry. There was a part of her that felt alive in a way she'd never felt before. A part that would rather dance until her feet bled than go back to being ordinary. Invisible. Unremarkable. The man saw it in her face. When you're ready to give that up, all of it, the beauty and the power and the eyes watching you, then come find me. I'll be here. Wet. But he was already fading, not walking away but simply becoming less solid, less real, until he was just a shadow between the trees, and then nothing at all. Karen was alone in the clearing, and she was still dancing. Part 8, the endless performance. Time didn't work right in the forest. Karen would dance until she was certain days had passed, until her throat was raw from thirst and her stomach hollow from hunger, until the twilight should have shifted into either full night or full day. But the light never changed. It remained constant, that eerie between illumination that made everything look both vivid and unreal. She tried to count her steps, to measure time that way, but she kept losing track. 100 steps, 200, 3. Then suddenly she'd find herself starting over. Unsure if she'd actually counted to 300, or if she'd imagined it. The shoes decided where she went. They danced her through clearings she'd seen before, or were they different clearings that looked identical? They spun her past trees that whispered in voices almost human. They lipped her over streams that flowed upward instead of down. And worst of all, they wouldn't let her fall. She wanted to collapse, wanted to just drop to the forest floor and surrender to exhaustion. But whenever her legs buckled, whenever her muscles finally gave out, the shoes would catch her, would pulse with heat and force her upright again, would drag her feet forward in a parody of dancing that made her want to scream. She did scream, sometimes. The sound echoed strangely in the forest, repeating back to her in fragments that didn't quite match what she'd said. "Help me. Can't stop. Please." No one answered. There was no one to answer. Her phone was dead. Her jacket had torn on some branch or thorn, leaving her arms exposed to the cool air. Her pajama pants were muddy and shredded. But the shoes, the red shoes were still perfect, gleaming, beautiful. She hated them. She loved them. She couldn't tell the difference anymore. Sometimes, in the moments when her mind cleared enough for coherent thought, she tried to understand what had happened. How shoes could be cursed. How her grandmother had known. How many women before her had danced these paths, wearing these same red leather prisons. "I'm sorry I wore them at all," her grandmother's note had said. But she'd kept them. Hadn't destroyed them, hadn't buried them, hadn't done anything except hide them in a box and pass them on. Why? The answer came to Karen slowly, in fragments, as she danced. Because you couldn't destroy them. Because they were beautiful. And beauty was a trap that closed the moment you admitted you wanted it. Because some part of her grandmother had still wanted someone to see what she'd seen, to feel what she'd felt, even knowing the cost. Even knowing the price was this dancing forever in a forest that existed outside of time, watched by no one, performing for an audience that would never applaud. On what might have been the third day, or the third week, or the third month, Karen found herself back in the clearing where she'd met the man. He was there again, or still there, standing in the same spot, as if he'd never left. Karen's body danced her in a circle around him, and she managed to gasp out, "How long? For me? Or for you, May?" 43 days. The number hit her like a physical blow. 43 days of dancing. Her body should be dead. Should have died weeks ago from dehydration, from starvation, from exhaustion. But the shoes wouldn't let her die. "What are you?" she asked. "A witness." The man watched her dance, his expression unchanged. "Someone has to see. Otherwise, what's the point of the performance?" "I don't want to be seen." The words came out as a shriek. "I just want it to stop." "Do you?" And there it was again, that terrible question, that horrible truth. Because even now, even after 43 days of torture, there was a part of her that felt special, that felt chosen, that believed her suffering was unique, and therefore meaningful. The part of her that had always wanted to be the center of attention, to be admired, to be seen, was still alive, still feeding the shoes, still giving them power. "You're not ready yet," the man said gently. "I am." Karen was sobbing now, huge gasping sobs that interrupted her breathing, but didn't interrupt her dancing. "I want them all off. I want to stop. I want." "You want to be free of the pain," the man corrected. "But you don't want to give up what they gave you. The certainty that you were special, that you mattered, that you were worth watching. That's not." But it was true. It was horribly, undeniably true. The man stepped forward. "When you're ready to be nobody again, I can help you. When you're ready to be ordinary, invisible, unremarkable, when you're ready to give up being seen, then I'll know." He reached into his coat and pulled out something that gleamed in the twilight. An axe, old, heavy, with a blade that looked sharp enough to split atoms. "This is what it takes," he said. "Not just removing the shoes, removing what they've attached to. Are you ready for that?" Karen looked down at her feet. The red shoes were pristine, beautiful, terrible. And below them, her actual feet. She could barely remember what they looked like. It had been so long since she'd seen them. "Not yet," she whispered. The man nodded and faded back into the shadows. Karen danced on. Part 9. Becoming empty, the forest began to change her. At first, she thought she was imagining it. The way her reflection in the streams looked subtly wrong. The way her shadow seemed to move independently of her body. But as the days, weeks, months continued, the changes became undeniable. Her body was thinning. Not with the gaunt starvation she'd seen in the mirror before entering the forest, but with something else, a translucence. When she held her hands up to the twilight, she could see through them, just barely, just enough to make her doubt her own solidity. She was becoming like the forest, both real and not real, present and absent, existing in the space between wanting and having. The shoes were part of her now. When she looked down, she couldn't tell where the red leather ended and her skin began. They'd merged. Or she'd merged with them, and the distinction no longer mattered. She didn't feel hunger anymore. Didn't feel thirst. Barely felt exhaustion, though she knew logically that her body must be beyond exhausted. Must be running on something other than physical energy. She was running on attention, on the memory of being watched, on the echo of all those comments, all those views, all those eyes that had made her feel real. But the echoes were fading. She could feel them slipping away, like water through cupped hands. The faces of her followers were blurring. The sound of applause was becoming distant. Even her mother's voice, the last anchor to who she'd been before the shoes, was dissolving into static. She was forgetting herself. And in the forgetting, something new was happening. She was starting not to care. When she returned to the clearing this time, and she couldn't say if it was her choice or the shoe's choice, or if there was any difference. The man was waiting with the axe already in his hands. "You're close," he said. Karen danced. Her movements were still precise, still beautiful, but they felt distant now, like watching someone else through a window. "I can't remember," she said, and her voice sounded thin. "I can't remember why I wanted them. That's good. Is it? It means you're letting go." The man held up the axe, examining the blade. "You're releasing the story you told yourself. The one where you were special. Where you mattered because people watched you." "I did matter." But the words had no conviction behind them. She wasn't sure anymore if she believed them, or if she'd ever believed them, or if belief itself was something she was capable of. "You mattered to yourself," the man said. "That was always enough. But you couldn't see it. You needed mirrors, you needed witnesses, you needed proof. The shoes gave you that proof. But the cost was you." Karen tried to remember what she'd looked like before. Who she'd been. A girl who worked retail. Who wanted to dance. Who had a mother who called and worried. It was like trying to remember a dream. The details slipped away even as she grasped for them. "I don't know who I am," she whispered. "Then you're ready." The man stepped forward, and this time, the shoes didn't spin her away. They let her stand still. For the first time in, how long? Weeks? Months? Years? She couldn't tell anymore, and it didn't matter. She stood still, and the stillness was its own kind of agony. "This will hurt," the man said. Not unkindly. Just as a fact. The way you might warn someone about a splinter before pulling it out. "I know. You'll lose more than the shoes. You'll lose the story they told you. The version of yourself they created. You'll go back to being ordinary." "Will I go back at all?" The man hesitated. "Some do. Some don't. The forest keeps what it wants to keep." Karen looked down at the shoes. Red and perfect and terrible. She couldn't see where they ended and her feet began, but she could feel them. The heat, the insistence. The hunger that had consumed her from the inside out. She had a choice. She could keep dancing. Could let the shoes carry her deeper into the forest. into that twilight space where she was becoming something else entirely. Something beautiful and empty and eternal. Or she could stop. Do it, she said. The amputation. The man gestured to a fallen log at the edge of the clearing. Sit. Karen's body obeyed before her mind processed the command. It was the first time in months that she'd sat down, and the sensation was so alien that she almost stood back up. But the man was already kneeling, already laying the axe across his lap as he examined her feet. Up close, the fusion was worse than she'd thought. The red leather had grown into her skin, or her skin had grown into the leather. Thin red veins spider, webbed up her ankles, disappearing under her torn pajama pants. When she flexed her toes experimentally, the shoes flexed too, as if they were reading her mind. It's gone deep, the man said. He wasn't looking at her face, just at her feet, clinical and focused. The longer you wear them, the deeper they root. You're lucky. I've seen women who waited so long the shoes reached their hearts. What happened to them? They're still dancing. He picked up the axe, testing its weight. Somewhere in the deep forest, where even I don't go. They've become part of the pattern now. Part of what lures others in. Karen thought of those perfect, repeating trees. The geometric moonlight. The clearings that looped back on themselves. How much of the forest was made of women like her? Women who'd wanted to be special, to be seen, to matter. Will it hurt? She asked. Yes, will I die? I don't know. The man finally met her eyes. Some do. Some lose too much blood, or go into shock, or simply give up. But some live. Some go back. And which? I don't know, he said again. That's between you and whatever you believe in. He positioned the axe above her left ankle. Karen closed her eyes, then opened them, because if she was going to do this, she wanted to see. Wanted to witness her own amputation, her own choice to stop being what the shoes had made her. Wet, she said. The man paused. If I live, if I go back, will I remember? All of it? Will I want to come back? To the forest too. She gestured vaguely at the twilight, the impossible trees, the space between wanting and having. Maybe, the man said. Probably. That's why most people don't make it this far. They can't let go of what the shoes gave them, even when it's killing them. But I can. You tell me. Karen looked down at the shoes one last time. They were beautiful. Even now, even fused to her flesh, and burning with their terrible heat. They were the most beautiful things she'd ever owned. And she hated them. And she loved them. And she needed them gone. Do it, she said again. The axe came down. The pain was immediate and totalizing. Karen screamed, or tried to scream. But the sound that came out was something else. Something inhuman. A shriek that echoed through the forest and came back changed, warped. Like the forest itself was screaming with her. The man worked quickly. One blow for the left foot, severing it cleanly at the ankle. The blood was wrong. Too red, too bright, and it steamed in the cool air. Then the right foot. Another blow, another scream that Karen couldn't contain. Her feet, what was left of them, lay on the ground between them. The shoes still gleamed, still perfect. But now they were separate from her. Empty vessels that had held her and consumed her and almost destroyed her. And even now, even as blood poured from her stumps and the pain threatened to black out her consciousness, she wanted to reach for them. The man saw the movement and pulled the shoes away. "Nope. Please." The word came out as a gasp. "No." He stood, holding the shoes like they might bite him, and walked to the edge of the clearing. There was a hole there that Karen hadn't noticed before. Dark, deep, ancient. The man dropped the shoes into it. Karen felt them fall. Felt the distance growing between her and the beautiful, terrible things that had defined her for months. And with the distance came something else, grief. She wept. Not from the pain in her feet, though that was enormous, overwhelming, but from the loss, from the knowledge that she would never dance like that again, never feel that alive, that powerful, that seen. The man returned and knelt beside her. From somewhere in his coat, he produced bandages. Old, fashioned strips of cloth that looked like they'd been used and washed and used again countless times. "How many?" Karen asked through her tears. "How many women have you done this to?" Enough to stop counting. He wrapped the bandages around her stumps, methodical and gentle. "Some I find too late, some I send back. A few," he paused. "A few choose to keep dancing. I watch them disappear into the forest, and I never see them again." "Why do you stay? Why do you help?" "Because someone has to." He tied off the bandage on her right stump. "Because I wore the shoes once too. A different pair, a different curse, but the same hunger. The same need to be special. And someone helped me, so I help others? How do I go back?" "You walk." He helped her stand, or tried to. Without her feet, balance was nearly impossible. She collapsed immediately, and the man caught her. "I can't walk," she said. "I can't." "Yes, you can." His voice was firm. "It will hurt and it will be slow, and it will be humbling. But you can. The forest will let you out now. You've paid the price." He helped her take the first step. It was agony. Her stumps, even wrapped in bandages, screamed with pain as they touched the ground. But the man was right. She could do it. Could limp, could crawl if necessary, could drag herself forward inch by inch. "Follow the trees," the man said, and his voice was already becoming distant. "They'll lead you to the edge. And when you get out, yes? Don't come back." Karen looked back at him, but he was fading again, becoming shadow and memory. The axe gleamed in his hands, and his gray eyes held something that might have been hope or might have been sorrow. Then he was gone, and Karen was alone. She began to walk. Epilogue: after the forest spat her out 3 days later. Or maybe it was 3 hours, or 3 weeks. Time had stopped meaning anything reliable. But eventually, between one step and the next, the twilight gave way to real darkness, and the geometric trees became ordinary trees. And Karen found herself at the edge of the forest, looking out at the path that led back to town. Dawn was breaking. Real dawn, with pink and gold light that made her eyes water after so long in the unchanging twilight. She sat down hard at the forest's edge, breathing in air that suddenly smelled real. Pine and earth and distant car exhaust. Her stumps throbbed with every heartbeat. The bandages were soaked through with blood. She should call for help. Should drag herself to the path, flag down a car, get to a hospital. But she couldn't move yet. Could only sit and breathe and exist in her body. This truncated, ordinary body that had carried her out of the forest. Her phone, miraculously, buzzed in her jacket pocket. It shouldn't work. It had been dead for months. But when she pulled it out, the screen glowed. 28% battery, 8:47 notifications. The date reading exactly 43 days after she'd entered the forest. She scrolled through the notifications with numb fingers. Comments on her videos, messages from followers, DMs from brands wanting collaborations. All of it had continued without her, the algorithm grinding onward, turning her disappearance into content. Where is she? Something happened to the red shoe girl, I heard. She had a breakdown. Mental health is no joke. Guys, there were news articles. Local dancer missing after viral videos. Search continues for Instagram star Karen Morrison. Mother pleads for information on missing daughter. Her mother. Karen opened her contacts and pressed the call button before she could think about it, before she could rehearse what to say. 3 rings. 4. Then her mother's voice, hoarse from crying or not sleeping. Hello, Mom. A sharp intake of breath. Karen, oh my God, where are you? Are you okay? We've been looking. I'm at the forest. The one on the edge of town. Karen looked down at her wrapped stumps. Mom, I need you to come get me. And call an ambulance. Tell them what? That she'd cut off her own feet. That she'd been dancing in an enchanted forest for 43 days. That she'd been consumed by cursed shoes and had to be severed from them. Tell them I need help, she said finally. I'm coming. Stay there, baby. Stay right there. The line went dead. Karen let the phone drop into her lap. She waited as the sun rose higher, as the sounds of the waking world grew louder. Birds, distant traffic, a dog barking somewhere. Normal sounds. Ordinary sounds. She was ordinary now, would be ordinary forever. No more dancing. No more beauty. No more eyes watching her, admiring her, envying her. And the relief she felt was so profound it hurt worse than the stumps. The hospital kept her for 6 weeks. The doctors couldn't explain the injuries. The wounds were clean. Too clean. Surgical almost. But there was no evidence of medical intervention. And the story Karen told, hiking accident, fell onto sharp rocks, was obviously false, but they couldn't prove it. Her mother never asked for the real explanation. Just sat beside her hospital bed, holding her hand, occasionally crying, always present. Lucia visited once, bringing flowers and an expression Karen couldn't read. I saw your last video, Lucia said. The one at 3 a.m. You looked. I know. I tried to reach you. I was worried. I know that too. Karen picked at the hospital blanket. You were right. About the shoes. About everything. Lucia glanced down at where Karen's feet should have been. Hidden under the blanket. The doctors were talking about prosthetics, about physical therapy, about learning to walk again. But none of them understood what had really been amputated. My grandmother told me stories, Lucia said quietly, before she died, about shoes that danced, about women who couldn't stop, about a forest that took and took and took. I thought she was confused. I thought the dementia? She stopped. I'm sorry I couldn't help you more. You tried. I didn't listen. No one ever does. Lucia stood, smoothing her shirt. If you need anything, physical therapy, someone to talk to, anything, call me. Okay? Karen nodded, but they both knew she wouldn't call. Some distances couldn't be bridged, and she danced too far beyond where Lucia could follow. She moved back in with her mother after the hospital discharged her. The apartment, her grandmother's apartment, sat empty. Karen couldn't bring herself to go back there, to face the closet where the shoes had been, to sleep in rooms where she danced until her mind broke. Her mother sold it for her, donated most of the contents to charity. But she brought Karen one thing's a small wooden box, old and plain, that had been hidden in the back of the closet. There's a note, her mother said, setting the box on Karen's lap. From your grandmother. It was taped to the lid. Karen opened the note with trembling fingers. If you're reading this, you survived. I'm sorry I couldn't warn you better. I'm sorry I kept them at all. But they're beautiful, aren't they? Even knowing what they cost, they're so beautiful. I buried my pair in the backyard, under the oak tree. But they won't stay buried. They find their way to whoever needs them next. Whoever is hungry enough, empty enough, desperate enough to believe that being seen is the same as being whole. You'll be tempted to go back, to dig them up, or to go to the forest, or to find another pair. There are always more pairs. Don't. The second time, they don't let you leave. Learn to be nobody, darling. It's the only freedom that matters. Grandma Karen read it 3 times, then folded it carefully and put it in her nightstand drawer. That night, she dreamed of dancing, of red shoes gleaming in twilight, of forests that sang, of the feeling of being seen so intensely it became indistinguishable from being alive. She woke up crying. 6 months later, Karen was walking again. Badly, with prosthetics that chafed and clicked, and never quite felt right, but walking nonetheless. She deleted her Instagram, deleted all her social media. The attention had faded quickly. Viral fame always did. There were new dancers now, new videos, new obsessions for the algorithm to feed. She got a job at a bookstore. Quiet, anonymous work. Customers barely looked at her, certainly didn't remember her. She was nobody to them, and the relief of that was still profound. But some nights, when the bookstore was empty and rain drummed on the windows, she felt the old hunger stirring, the need to be special, to be seen, to matter in a way that ordinary living didn't seem to allow. Those nights, she pulled out her grandmother's note and read it until the feeling passed. Learn to be nobody. It was harder than cutting off her feet had been. Harder than anything. But she was learning. 1 year after the forest, Karen was closing up the bookstore when a young woman came in. early 20s, bright-eyed, wearing red sneakers that seemed to gleam a little too brightly under the fluorescent lights. "Sorry, we're closed," Karen said automatically. "Oh, I'm not here for books." The young woman smiled. "I saw you. On Instagram. Like a year ago. You were the dancer, right? The one with the red shoes." Karen's blood went cold. "No. You're thinking of someone else." "No, I'm sure it was you. You were amazing. I've been trying to find shoes like yours ever since." "I want to." "Don't." The word came out harder than Karen intended. She took a breath, softened her voice. "Don't look for them. Trust me." The young woman's smile faltered. "I just want to dance like you did. To feel like I know what you want to feel." Karen moved closer, close enough to see her own reflection in the young woman's eyes. She looked old, she realized. Tired. Ordinary. But those shoes, or any shoes like them, they'll take everything. And you won't realize it's happening until it's too late. "You sound like my mom." The young woman laughed. Uncomfortable. "I'm just looking for inspiration, not." "Please." Karen reached out and grabbed the young woman's arm. "I'm telling you this because no one told me. Whatever you're looking for, recognition, beauty, proof that you matter, you won't find it in things that make you feel special. You'll only find yourself becoming less." The young woman pulled her arm free. "Okay. Weird. I'm just going to go." She left quickly, the bell over the door chiming her exit. Karen stood alone in the empty bookstore, her heart racing, her prosthetics aching from a long day on her feet. The young woman would look for the shoes anyway. Or shoes like them. Because hunger didn't listen to warnings, and the need to be seen was stronger than fear. Karen knew this because she still felt it. Every day. The ghost ache of phantom feet that wanted to dance, of a self that had been amputated along with the shoes. But she also knew this: she'd survived. She'd cut away what was killing her, and she'd learned to live as nobody. And some days, not every day but some days, that felt like enough. She locked the door and limped home through the ordinary night, under ordinary stars, past ordinary people who didn't see her at all, and she was grateful. Coda, the waiting in the deep forest, where the twilight never changes, and the trees stand in perfect geometric patterns. The shoes wait in their hole. They are patient. They have always been patient. Somewhere, in some closet or attic or estate sale, another pair is being discovered, red and perfect and beautiful. And someone is trying them on. Feeling that first rush of rightness, that first taste of being special. The shoes in the forest pulse once, recognizing the pattern beginning again. They'll be needed eventually. All the pairs lead here, to this threshold, to this choice. Dance forever or give up being seen, and most choose to dance. But some, a few, a precious few, choose to stop, to amputate, to become nobody. And for them, the man with the axe and the gray eyes waits, patient as the shoes themselves. Because someone has to witness. Someone has to see. Even if it's just the moment when someone finally chooses not to be seen at all. The shoes pulse again and settle deeper into their hole. Waiting. always waiting. For the next dancer. For the next performance. For the next soul hungry enough to believe that beauty is worth any price. E&D